week we have an interview with Victoria Jackson. Today we get to hear about her life and experiences. Hello, Victoria. It's great to meet you.
Hi, it's nice to meet you too. Thank you for having me.
So Victoria, tell us a little bit about yourself. This can correlate with anything that has to do with your family, your job, your hobbies, or where you're from.
So I'm 32 years old. I'm from Toronto, Ontario. Born and raised here. Married with a puppy. I'm an entrepreneur, so I own a few businesses. So kind of just always on the go, and luckily able to make my own schedule. And otherwise, I love movies, animals, and especially horror movies at this time of year.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I can see the fish in the background.
Yes.
So would you mind telling us the story of how you were diagnosed?
Yeah. So I mean, my health issues really started at like around the age of 5 was when I started to really have like really intense stomach issues. But doctors weren't really sure what it was. And a lot of it was kind of brought back to, do I not like school? Do I not want to be there? But I actually really loved school and I did really well. When I turned 12 was when I first got my first period. And that's when my health completely took a turn for the worst. Just kind of overnight, I lost a lot of weight. I became really pale, and I was getting my periods twice a month, and the pain was just unbearable every day. I also started fainting a lot. So normally around the time of my period, I would faint like track meets or at the mall or anything like that. My doctors basically had no idea what was wrong with me. They thought that birth control would be a good option. So at 14, I got put on birth control, and we kind of just tried maybe 10 to 15 different kinds over the years until about the age of 28-ish, which is when my husband and I were about to get married, and I wanted my fertility looked at. And one of the things that they'd seen was something called hydrosplinks inside my tubes, my fallopian tubes, on ultrasounds starting back in 2012. And unfortunately, the clinic that I work at kind of said, you know what, we're just going to leave that. We're going to keep medicating you. And when you want to have children, we'll deal with it. So when 2019 finally came and we wanted to pursue that option, they did a sonohysterogram and found that both of my tubes were blocked with large cysts, and I was advised to have them removed. And even at this time, when I finally got to an excision specialist, an endometriosis specialist, I'd heard the word endometriosis for the first time in 2012 when they saw my tubes. They had tried to treat me with antibiotics about 3 times, 3 rounds, and noticed that the fluid wasn't leaving my tubes. So they thought that I have endometriosis and that I needed to find a specialist. And it took me from 2012 to 2019 to find a specialist and sit in front of her. And when I finally did, she really was, she said, your tubes should come out. And she really didn't think that my case was that bad. She said to me, some girls have their organs stuck together. You should be glad you don't. And a lot of the things that I told her, she was saying, that's not endometriosis. That's something else that you need to figure out. So like I had lots and lots of nausea and a lot of pain in my vagina. It was like one of the main symptoms I had that was just like debilitating. Finally, when I didn't really like the options I had here, she told me, the medication I'd been on since 14 was something I had to continue forever, even after surgery. And that she didn't think my tubes could be saved. I didn't really like those options. So I started looking elsewhere, and very long story short, I ended up actually finding a doctor in Atlanta in the US. And when I sent him my medical documents, the first thing he said to me was, you need to get off the medications you're on right now, because if they were working, your organs wouldn't look like this. And his concern was actually, your tubes are a problem, but I think that there's just so much more going on that needs to be addressed. So I ended up actually flying over there in July during the pandemic for surgery. We did the surgery, and the most interesting to me was that I had ultrasounds done since the age of 5 here in Canada. And when I went there, he did one ultrasound at the pre-op himself, and within less than 2 minutes, he could identify endometriosis, identify that my ovary was adhered to my pelvic wall, and so was my tube. And that was something in 20 years, not a single doctor was able to catch. And so we went into surgery. The surgery was 4.5 hours long. Every single one of my organs in my pelvic area were adhered together. So my bladder, bowel, my appendix, liver, uterus, fallopian tubes, and ovaries, and they were adhered to my sidewall. So exactly what this specialist in Canada told me I was lucky I didn't have was what ended up happening. Um, and on top of that, he found endosalpingiosis. And that was something I'd never even heard of. And that was something that he found on my bladder, my vagina, rectovaginal space, uterosacral ligaments, pelvic sidewalls. And that was something I'd never even heard of until my surgery. So that was like a surprise in the pathology report. He also found what he believed was severe pelvic inflammatory disease, which had caused some of the adhesions, as well as Fitzhugh-Curtis on my liver, which was just due to so many years of adhesions on my liver. And he found interstitial cystitis inside my bladder. So the complaints I'd had about my bladder and having to pee so frequently that my doctor kind of ignored was from that. And one of the most interesting that I found was that there was a lot of endometriosis found in my intestines, which makes me very confused as to why the specialists in Canada would think that wasn't related to endo. But so he removed all of the adhesions, excised all of the endometriosis and endosalpingiosis, and then he did chromotubation on my fallopian tubes, which essentially he did something called the Bruhad procedure, which is he cut them open lengthwise, floured them open, cleared them out, and then reconstructed them back closed. And he was able to do a test, an HSG test, to show that they were open during the surgery. So I'm now like almost 12 weeks post-op, and like finally have a diagnosis, finally know like kind of what's going on and kind of taking matters into my own hands.
That's crazy. Wow, that's a lot. How,
Yeah.
yeah. How has your recovery been from surgery?
It's been really up and down. The beginning was really difficult. I was really, really, really sore, and that was hard to deal with. And then I had to fly back to Canada. Once I settled back in, I dealt with a few rounds of infections, like urinary tract infections, which are quite common from the use of a catheter. And otherwise, I'm just very slowly recovering. I think that I thought that I would be back at work already full time, but I'm not. I thought that I would be, back at the gym already, but I'm not. I'm doing pelvic floor therapy almost every day. And when I go to see her in person every few weeks, she's not cleared me to do like any sit-ups or anything like that yet. So it's kind of a very slow progress. But besides all of that, the second that I woke up from surgery, like I knew that I had a different life. And my life is so much better. Like, I'm getting emotional, but it's so much better. I used to wake up every morning and like wonder how I could get through the day. And now I wake up like excited because I don't feel like that pain right away. So I definitely feel like I lost like 40 pounds in my stomach.
Yeah, that's good. Like they finally, after years of like not knowing like what's going on, you finally get to have an answer as to like what's causing you all this pain and distress.
Exactly.
How would you say your family was impacted by your condition?
Well, my mom was impacted for a long time. Like ever since I was 5, she was taking me to ultrasounds, taking me to doctors. When I first got my period was when she, like I was saying, she was like, no, there's something very wrong and it can't be ignored anymore. And it was really hard for her to advocate for me through all of the doctors that we've been through. Otherwise, I actually own a business with my family. So there was a big shift about 3 years ago, 3 years ago, where I had to sit them down and say, I can't work full time anymore. I have to like really limit my hours. I have to limit what I'm doing because I was just getting so sick before my surgery. So it was kind of a thing that everybody in the family had to become aware of. There's pretty much no ignoring it anymore in my family. And then making the decision to go to the US during the pandemic was difficult for them to accept. It did take a long time for my family members to support me, but ultimately, when they realized that I didn't have another option here, they were all really supportive.
Yeah, that's great. Where did wait? When did you where did you come from, like, to the U.S.?
So I went from Toronto in Canada to I went to Atlanta. I went to the Center for Restorative Reproductive Surgery in Atlanta, and the doctor I saw is Dr. Nick Kangawasa. And Dr. Kangawasa is an expert in excision. He worked at the Center for Endocare and the Mayo Clinic, but he has since then started his own clinic to specialize in um, reproductive restoration, so restoring any types of reproductive organs. And he also, I still work with him. So he's right now, he actually was the first doctor to ever check my insulin right before surgeries. And, you know, you've been fainting a lot, let's check your insulin. And he found that I have insulin resistance. And that's not something that's necessarily common with endo. So nobody had ever checked it or even thought to give me that test. Actually, when I went to the clinic here in Toronto, they said that they had never run that test ever in that clinic. And they had to call somebody to find out how to run the test. So it's just not, it wasn't a common test that we do here. Um, so he's helping me to balance my insulin and my hormones and everything right now as well. So he's kind of like unlike the doctors here, he's very interested in why your hormones are a certain way and getting your hormones back on track. And he agrees with me of not wanting to be on hormone therapy anymore, not wanting to be on birth control. So yeah, we're working on like lots of supplements, and I'm actually taking metformin now for my insulin as well.
Yeah, it's good that, like, you finally found a doctor who actually takes, like, your symptoms seriously instead of just like saying, "Oh, maybe it's just you're being dramatic or
Exactly.
something." Yeah.
Exactly. Like I felt that he believed me right away, and I was able to have conversations with him. Like after surgery, I said, "Okay, so why did it hurt when I had sex?" And he said, "Well, it hurt because you had endo and endosalpingiosis in your uterosacral ligaments in your vagina, and because your ovaries and tubes were adhered to the bottom of your pelvic cavity and blocking your hole." And he was able, like everything, he could actually break it down to me and patiently explain to me so that I could understand. And that's like very rare in my experience.
Okay, so obviously your condition has prevented you from living life as most people would. In particular, are there any things that most people take for granted?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think just being able to do everything on your to-do list in one day is like something people take for granted. Being able to go to a job that's 9 to 5, people take for granted. Just health in general, like now any hour that I feel good is like the best hour of my life, and I'm so happy and I'm so grateful. And also like I spent most of my life trying to like prove to my doctor that I have some disease, and then now that I have it, everyone's kind of like, so you're cured now, like you're good now. And so I think that they take for granted that like things don't just go away. There are lifelong conditions that you have to actively deal with every day. If I don't take my supplements or my metformin one day, I'm going to be really sick. So I guess just like that every day, like always having to think about our bodies, always having to think about our decisions is something that most people probably don't have to deal with.
Yeah, so yeah, that's so true. I feel like most people tend to go, like, from day-to-day life, just like taking for granted just like the simple things of, like, for example, like, um going back and forth from your job. And yeah, so
Definitely.
um yeah. Um I have another question. How have your experiences with rare disease shaped your dreams or your career?
Ooh, well, I think for a long time, I kind of, for like probably the last year at least, I kind of was like, well, I'm at the max capacity of what I can ever accomplish in life. I don't have energy for more. I don't know how I'm going to be feeling. And it was pretty depressing, kind of to be like, I don't think I can accomplish more. Since then, my point of view has changed a bit, that I believe in myself a lot more, and I believe in my gut a lot more because I was able to stick up for myself. But, with that being said, as I said earlier, I did have to have a conversation with my business years ago to change my hours. I learned very quickly in university I could never have a 9 to 5 job because my body would never allow that. So that ruled out a lot of options for me. I pretty much had to become an entrepreneur, or else I would be unemployed. So, I'm taking it as a good thing, but there's a lot of jobs that I would look at, and I would say that would just not be an option for me.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur is cool though, you know. So
It is.
it's good to have like your own hours and your own schedule.
Totally.
Yeah. Um, um, Based on your experiences, what advice would you have for other people trying to advocate for rare diseases and bring change about um for the community?
Well, I guess two things. The one thing I would say is if you feel that something's wrong or if something's not right, like to truly advocate for yourself and to just keep reminding yourself that you know your body best and that there isn't a doctor in the world, no matter how good they are, that knows your body better than you do. So when your gut tells you something's wrong, like you really, really have to believe in and pursue it because we only have this one life. The other thing that I would say is for everybody in the world, like I guarantee you know at least one person with a rare disease or a chronic illness. So, reach out to people, ask how people are doing, and ask how you can help.
Yeah, I think um like actually like trying to find different doctors who like are like considerate and finding your like the reason for your pain and is like very important. Um I probably yeah. Okay, so what would you say is the most important lesson that you learned from living with a rare disease?
Um, Definitely would be to trust my gut, and that there's times when the doctors have even like prescribed me medications, and I've like held them in my hand or something, and have been like no, and later found out like how bad that medication was or whatnot, whatever it is. Like to really trust your gut, and when they say that that's not possible for you. Like when they said I can never be off medication or whatnot, like I'm 3 months off medication right now, and that's not something I was told would be possible. So just believe in yourself.
Um as you aged, were the symptoms like more and more severe?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely got worse over time, and then up to my surgery, I was pretty much like right before I was like debilitated. Like I couldn't go to work, I couldn't work out in any capacity. So it got to the point that I was really bad. But I'd say like around 23, 24 was when it started to get really, really bad to the point that I knew this was more than like a small issue. And then around 31 was when it was just like unbearable completely.
Yeah. Um that's a long time. Like
Yeah, way too long.
what advice would you give to patients as well as advocates and caretakers?
Um, well, I guess to talk about it first off, I think the more conversations we have, the better. Like I said, I hadn't even heard of endosalpingiosis before, and I'd been researching endometriosis for like 10 years, and it's like appalling that I'd never come across that when it's so often together. So, to just kind of talk about it and get the conversation going. And otherwise, like I was saying before, just really asking what people need. Like a lot of us deal with guilt, like so much guilt from not being able to be places or go places or having to cancel or whatnot. And yeah, and it's difficult. So it's really nice when people understand what we're going through and don't. I know a lot of people that have lost relationships because they can't be places or things. So, to try and see things from our point of view and still invite us, but just know that we'll be there if we can.
How was while you were in school, how did this affect you?
Well, I ended up dropping out of university, if that tells you anything. it was horrible. I missed a lot of school, elementary and high school. And then when I got to university, I kept having to drop courses because I would just be sick and I couldn't take on that load. And then eventually I ended up actually dropping out and going into my business instead. So it was a very difficult decision, and part of me would like to go back, but I don't see. I mean, now that things are more online, because granted, this was like in 2006, but I don't see that would be something that would be realistic for me unless I could do it online. So I have like a lot of sympathy for anybody that's in school struggling, because it's very difficult to have, a professor believe you, to be quite honest, and it's really unfortunate. And the same goes for the workplace. So it's very difficult. I had a very difficult time.
Yeah, and I can imagine like getting across campus is even like harder.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, I don't really have any more questions, but if you want to add anything, you're free to say anything that you want.
I mean, I don't know. The only thing I would add is just to like reiterate that, your doctor, even when I went to see, the best advice I got when I went to see one of Canada's top endometriosis specialists was, you know, she's great. She's a wonderful doctor, but she's a human being. And everything that she says to you, think about it, see how it makes you feel, and really just, take it in and think about it. Don't just take it as fact. And that's what actually led me to making the decision to find a different doctor. Whereas I know I could have so easily taken the prescription she offered and just tumbled into another set of hormones and whatnot. But it was just kind of stepping back and saying, okay, it's not, any disrespect to her. It's nothing against her education or her expertise, but it's just, does her goal fit with mine? Does her like treatment plan fit with mine? And like really seeing if you vibe with the doctor, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with this doctor. So you really have to align. So I'd say the best advice I got is to, no matter what doctor you're seeing, if he says or she says something that doesn't sit well with you, like speak up and be loud about it.
Yeah, I think the connection between the patient and doctor, there needs to be trust in order to be like,
Totally.
you're actually gonna heal and like get better day by day.
And that's exactly it. And with the doctor that I was seeing here in Canada, there's a drug that I knew I didn't want to be on, which is Lupron. And I know that she had put several people on it. And I also do know that, there's class action lawsuits in the US right now against it, because there was some doctor test results where actually a whole huge percentage of women never got their ovarian reserve back after the medication. And so when she prescribed that to me, I could have done it. And I'm so glad that I stepped back and was just like, this doesn't sit with me. And I literally thank God every day that I did that. So yeah, just really just listening. And if I can't trust her and the prescription she's giving me, she's definitely not cutting me open. Like, so it has to be somebody that you fully trust.
Yes. For like medication, are you prescribed like multiple pills or
So
or
for a long time, I was on, like many years, I was on different types of birth controls, and they'll switch you up different kinds. Sometimes they'll have you taking it continuously so you don't get your period, and then sometimes you just take it normally. I was on a medication called Vizan, which is a synthetic progesterone, and it's supposed to actually stop your period and kind of mimic pregnancy. But I actually was on it for 9 months, and I bled daily for 9 months on it. So it does. And the doctor here was not willing to take me off it and continue to see me. So that's kind of was a big fork in the road for me as well, where I knew that medication wasn't working for me. Right now, what I'm on is a lot of natural supplements. So all prescribed by my doctor. So daily vitamin D, vitamin C, as well as folic acid, a prenatal, because we're trying to conceive. I'm taking CBD daily as well, and my metformin. And then what the doctor actually has me on right now is also progesterone, natural progesterone that I'm taking 10 days a month. But that is for like trying to get pregnant. If I was not doing that, then I would just be taking the metformin and the natural supplements. So I'm trying not to do any of the like synthetic hormones because after 20 years I don't want to take them anymore. So I'm hoping that works for me.
Yeah, that's good. It's good that you actually have like an actual solid treatment plan with a solid doctor, and you get to wake up every day knowing that your surgery is what really helped you heal and get through the day and feel not so weak.
Exactly, and not so crazy.
Um, so those are all the questions that I have. Thank you so much for like interviewing with Shaping Foundations and talking about how your life has been affected greatly from a rare disease. And I think that as days go by, one day more and more people will be able to wake up and feel better like you.
I
And
hope so. Well, thank you so much for having me.